Hey everyone, this is Smart Mouth Pundit, and today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to step away from the heavy editing and jokes for a sec to explain in depth why I'm an atheist and why I think that that is the most logical position that you can have in regards to the existence of a God or whatever. So, imagine if you will that you have a box, and this box cannot be opened, this box cannot be seen through, this box cannot be picked up or meddled with in any other kind of way that one could possibly imagine that will lead you to know what's inside of it. And you have four people sit around this box, and they're all asked to come to a conclusion as to what's its contents. So one's an atheist, one's an agnostic, one's a deist, and one's a theist. Now, technically, deists are theists, but I'm going to separate the two for the sake of the example that I'm giving. So, the atheist comes to the conclusion that there's nothing inside of the box. After all, the box cannot be opened, it cannot be meddled with, there's no way of knowing what's inside. So there's probably nothing inside of the box. I mean, even if there was, there's no way you'd ever know what's inside of the box. And agnostic would be something along the lines of, say, there's no way of knowing. There might be something in the box, there might not be something in the box. They're more or less indifferent to it. And the deist will say, well, it's a box, it's meant to contain something, chances are there's something inside of it. And the theist, like the deist, says that there's something inside of the box, but he goes a little bit further than that. He says not only does he know that there's something inside of the box, he knows exactly what's inside of the box. He knows its nature, he knows its origin, he knows how it got there, he knows its intentions, he knows its mindset, he knows its shape, its size, its color. He knows all of this, or at least he claims to. These are all just baseless assumptions that he's making based on zero evidence. Even if God was proven to exist tomorrow, that would not necessarily give any legitimacy to any of the other extracurricular beliefs such as reincarnation, an immortal soul, heaven and hell, original sin, and all that. It wouldn't make the Bible any more valid. It wouldn't make anything any more valid in respects to religion, other than the fact that it might be considered that since this God, if he was omnipotent, could have made all these things possible. But other than that, it doesn't bring any legitimacy to any of these other claims. Basically what I'm saying is, I don't know whether or not God exists. I doubt it. But I am pretty sure that regardless of whether or not he exists, he is not part of any particular religion. In fact, I'm fairly certain of that because of a lack of consistency. The Bible and its contents, and basically with any other religion, their contents are inconsistent with reality, and they are inconsistent with themselves. They're inconsistent within themselves regarding the nature of God and the universe. Using Christianity as a perfect example, God is interpreted as being perfect, and yet he does not really demonstrate anything close to perfection throughout the course of the Bible, particularly the Old Testament. He is subject to jealousy, fits of rage. He tends to be homicidal, even genocidal. He even committed suicide technically in the New Testament, if you believe that Jesus is really the incarnation of God. And this is not what you expect out of a perfect being. This is not what you expect out of someone who claims to be all-knowing and all-powerful. Not someone who says he's going to destroy the world because he essentially made a mistake. I mean, he basically flooded the planet because he said he made a mistake. And you know, there's people who say that parts of the Bible or most of the Bible is just allegorical, and they never really go as far as to explain how they determine which parts really are supposed to be taken seriously or which parts aren't. And some people just take none of it seriously. But regardless of the fact, if the Bible is mostly, partially, or entirely metaphorical, then that really makes every part that you call metaphorical, that makes the Christian God less like the Christian God. You know what I mean? Because The Bible is supposed to be the Word of God, or it's supposed to tell you about God. And the more muddled you make the Bible's contents, the less you take it seriously, the less Christian God becomes, and the more redundant being a Christian becomes. Putting it simply, if God is not the homicidal, genocidal, wrathful, jealous, petty tyrant that he is in the Bible, then he really isn't Christian. Because as far as Christians are concerned, the only thing that they can really agree on is that the Bible is more or less divinely inspired. They interpret it differently, they take it seriously to varying degrees, but that's really the only thing that Christians can agree on, is that the Bible is at the very least divinely inspired. It's the only real commonality they have regarding the origin and nature of God. And it really just amazes me how apologetic people are about their own religion versus other religions. For example, I knew someone who had a statue of Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction, in her living room. And I knew who Shiva was, and I'm like, you do realize that that is the Hindu god of destruction, right? Because she was a Christian. And she didn't really take me seriously. She didn't really listen to me. She said she just got it because it was Oriental. But one day she picked me up from somewhere, and I noticed a statue in the back seat of the car, because she had one of those cars that only had 2 doors, and I could see the back part of the car, the part on the, you know, where you settle your foot in the back, and I could see the statue there when I opened up the door. And I noticed the statue was there, and I said, what's it doing there? And she had mentioned to me that she had found out who Shiva was because one of her friends, she had known a thing or two about Hindu mythology, and she had looked a few things up, and it turned out that Shiva was responsible for decapitating his own son, Ganesha. And the story is actually different depending on, there's different versions of the story. For instance, there's one version where Ganesha isn't really his son, and he's actually standing guard at Shiva's wife's door, or bathroom door. And there's another story where he's his son, but he isn't exactly responsible, I think. But it doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is, she heard the one where he had decapitated his own son's head. Now, as cruel and sadistic as this may sound, Shiva is a very important deity. He's arguably the most important, maybe second behind Vishnu, in Hindu mythology. And so, you know, she's a Christian, and, you know, we have Christianity where Jesus was burned at the cross, and he was the Son of God who God allowed to be burned at the cross. And in some instances, it's even the incarnation of God who allowed himself to be burned at the cross, depending on how you want to interpret it. And in my opinion, this doesn't necessarily sound as cruel as killing your own son, but it definitely sounds pretty retarded, as I pointed out in one of the videos, my Ask an Atheist video series. And I'm curious, for those people who rationalize believing in the Bible, saying that it's testimony, usually not actually eyewitness testimony, but testimony or historical records that are written decades after the fact, such as after Jesus' death, I wonder how they justify taking the Bible so seriously and not any other religion. Because if you think that one account or one book of several accounts of an event is proof enough to believe in it, then why don't you believe all of these other religions? I mean, let me put it this way. Imagine if a dozen people told you today that they saw a man fly in the sky. Would you take them seriously? Something tells me you wouldn't. So why would you take seriously people who were alive hundreds and hundreds of years ago, who written something decades after the fact that this man went around performing miracles and defying the laws of nature? I mean, the question really is, do you consider that valid testimony, or do you just want it to be true?